I'd like to call this meeting of the Northwest Local School District Board of Education to order. Amy, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Harlow?
Here.
Mr. Detzel?
Here.
Mrs. Detzel? Here. Mr. Heather?
If everyone would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next item is a superintendent item. Dr. Jackson?
Yes, we did add some human resources items to this agenda. We have 8 resignations and 5 extra duty procedural resignations. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certificated license, personnel, retirements, and resignations as listed.
So moved. Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Amy, please call for a vote. The motion carries 5-0. Our next item is another superintendent item.
Yes, these are classified resignations. We have 6 resignations and 2 substitute procedural resignations. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Amy, please call a vote. The motion carries 5-0. We have another superintendent item.
Yes, this is under certificated license personnel items. We have 2 administrative appointments, 22 initial appointments. We have several extended service contracts, several extra duty contracts, and a resolution to hire 4 non-licensed coaches. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certificated license personnel items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Amy, please call a vote. The motion carries 5-0. Our next item is a classified personnel item. Dr. Jackson?
Under classified, we have 1 administrative contract, 3 initial appointments, 2 classified substitutes, 2 leaves of absence, and 1 change in status. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified personnel items as listed.
So moved. Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Amy, please call a vote. Motion carries 5-0. And our next item is a fiscal item, Dr. Jackson.
So this is the real purpose of the meeting, to discuss what the board wants, how they want to move forward with a potential bond and/or operating and/or bond operating combination levy. Amy and I have met. We've met with the central office team. We included a memo in there. A few things for the board to consider before we turn it over to for discussion. First of all, the board has a lot of options because of the financial status of the district and how each time our 5-year forecast continues to improve. So because of the 5-year forecast, there are a lot of options. We do feel like it would be best to basically stay with the same bond program that we have, which except to increase it from $85 to $86 million to allow for air conditioning at Colerain Elementary. The original plan was to just pay that out of permanent improvement, but we think we'd be better served to do it as part of the bond. And then to lower the operating levy to an amount so that with the rollbacks that are no longer the state credits that basically with the changes in the law, the state credits that go away, to lower the operating low enough so that the overall bond millage and levy millage drops so that we can say it will be cost neutral or a reduction in taxes. Amy was able to speak to the auditor's office to get confirmation that anything at 3.87 or below will offset the rollbacks that are discontinued. So if the board stays at 3.87 or below in millage, they can say for everyone it will not be a tax increase for everyone, and several people will actually get a reduction. The last time it was a little confusing because even though the rate lowered, some saw a small increase, some saw a small decrease. So it was a difficult message to explain and to advertise. So if the board stays at 3.87 or below, you'll be able to do that. If at an $86 million bond, it would be 3.18 would be the millage for the bond by itself. And then you could add as much as 0.69 mils of operating and still be at 3.87 or below. That example is given to you in the very last sheet in your packet, which is number 6. These are the same items that were in the system as well, but we provided hard copies for you. And it shows an ending cash balance of approximately $35 million at the end of 5 years. And that is with the $86 million bond and a 0.69 mils and renewing the 2017 levy as well. So that's what gives you basically a $35 million. But again, like I said, there are a lot of different options. Amy, do you have any comments you want to add before the board begins discussing this?
No, we just did the scenarios. The version 4 would be doing the building bonds at 86 million or whatever you would prefer to do with no operating, and it shows you the effect on the general fund. Takes it down to 32 million at year 5. Version 5 would be to do building bonds for just the elementary portion of the facilities plan, and then to incorporate the middle school and high school and Houston renovations within the general fund using our carryover balance to do those projects, which would bring us down to $25 million. And then version 6, as Andrew just described. We also want to think about our carryover balance. You want it between 45 and 60 days. So that's between 18 and $24 million is what you'd want that balance to always be at. And also remember that in year 5, we're looking at an operating deficit of around $5 million that we'll have to adjust over the next few years, trying to get that back in line and be a zero or a positive operating balance.
Now, are all those scenarios based on the renewal of the 2017?
Correct, yes, at the full amount.
Right, okay.
That would be a straight renewal that would actually make that levy still subject to the rollbacks, because it would be a straight renewal.
Correct.
And the recommendation from the team is which version?
Version 6 is the 5-year forecast, and that is to stay with the same bond except add $1 million to it, so 86 instead of 85 million. That would be replacing 3 elementary schools, renovating the high schools, the middle schools, and Corwin Elementary, and then adding a 0.69 mil to the operating.
And
overall 3.87.
we would be able on our signs, if we chose to, we could say this will not raise your taxes.
Correct.
But that wording won't be at the ballot when they go.
Correct.
Okay.
It'll be our job to get that.
To get that out there, yeah.
Because I'm not sure that,
But if we could put it on the signs this time, that would be huge.
it's, yeah.
Or put it on a gigantic billboard, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That,
Probably a better billboard or TV message than signs. I mean, it just starts to kind of,
Yeah.
signs get cluttered, I mean,
but,
and
yeah,
mail and everything, but
any of the levies that you see for police or roads, whatever, it doesn't raise your taxes. It always says on there, will not raise your taxes. And I can't remember, and I follow this stuff pretty closely, I just can't ever remember one that has said that has ever lost. And you're the political
I
guru.
have a Northwest District Dimensions issue at home from 1979 that board voted for a 1-year rollback, and I meant to bring it in and I didn't.
Yeah, but have you ever seen one that says, will not raise your taxes go down?
no.
I have to say no.
I don't think so.
Good. And in all due respect to the voters, when we voted last time, I don't think any of us knew about that state rollback on the credit. I mean, that was done in good faith. That wasn't to try to sneak something through. I mean, we thought it was a tax reduction for everyone, so now we know for sure.
I mean, I think based on the fact that we hired an architectural firm and they went through building by building, made a recommendation to this board, and the recommendation coming from the team, the message last time was that it would impact every student in the district. And we can still say that, but also say it's not going to raise your taxes. I kind of think it's a no-brainer. If the five of us truly believed in that last time, I don't see anything that's changed other than more positive, that now we can say it really isn't going to raise anybody's taxes. So I would like to see us go with that, and the fact that we can say too that we've included the air conditioning for Colerain L, which makes every elementary in the district would be air conditioned. We'll have to deal with other stuff later, but I think that would be huge as well. I think that would be a good message for the people of Colerain L.
So is the only essential difference between version 5 and version 6 where we spend the funds that we use for the last $1 million, where we're putting either 86 million in a bond versus 85 and then $1 million out of permanent improvement?
No, version 5, you're doing like 68 million in a bond, just the
Okay.
elementaries only, and you're spending general fund dollars to renovate the middle schools, the high schools in Houston.
So if you look at fiscal year 17 and 18 on number 5, if you go down to 3.050 capital outlay, fiscal year 17 and 18, you can see just over $7 million. So what would happen in fiscal year 17 and 18, those 2 years, we would do all the renovations to the middle schools and the high schools that would have been included in the bond, we'd pay cash for them instead. So we wouldn't finance a part of the bond, it would just come out of general fund, basically, to pay for that. What happens then is your final overall, and then that is, what's the amount of the operating on this one, Amy?
5 or 6.
On number 5. So it would be a bond of 68 million.
5 would be a 1.35 mil operating, but that's staying at the total 3.87 mil.
So it's really just an essential difference of, the difference between 5 and 6 is how much do we bond and how much do we pull from the
Yeah.
operating levy. We're doing, version 5 or version 6, we're doing the same work. It's just a question of paying for it. Oh, yeah. okay.
Correct.
But the cash balance
The
is
cash
much
balance,
higher
yes.
in
Yes,
6.
$10 million higher
Yeah.
in version 6.
Right, 5 is to do less in a bond and use our carryover operating balance in the general fund to pay for renovations. And then it also incorporates the whole 3.87 mils that are possible. 2.52 would be what would be for the $68 million bond, and then the other 1.35 for operating.
I would be inclined to, I think we had it right on May 6th with the bond amount that we had and the operating millage that we had. Obviously, it didn't pass. I'd be in favor of lowering that operating millage down to reach that target of 3.87 or lower, and keeping the bond as it was at 85, which is, I'm just one of the 5 of us, but that's what my feelings are on it.
Without adding the air conditioning for cold?
Well, just pay that out of the, I don't know, what's the balance in the permanent improvement fund at that point?
We have about $800,000 a year to spend on maintenance and permanent improvements.
What's the balance in the permanent improvement account right now?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, there's
what we bring in-
$800,000 in there that's,
Each year we'll bring in an additional $800,000 that's not already set for our technology, our busing, and our debt payments for the house.
so we're pretty much spending that $800,000 every year right
The
now.
$3 million that comes in there, we're down to $800,000 a
Okay.
year to spend on additional maintenance type items that's not already accounted for.
Is Colerain Elementary going to get air conditioned in either version 5 or version 6? It's
Yes.
just a matter of where it's...
Yes. So we could really, it sounds like what Dan basically is saying is it would be very similar to version 6, except the bond would be lowered to 85 million, and we would pay for so it'd be a slightly, the operating would be the same, but the bond would be slightly
I
lower.
just wouldn't want to go out to people and say, hey, we know we didn't pass in May, so we've increased it by
Yeah, but we can
$1 million.
explain, but we've lowered the operating part, correct? So when we're explaining it, yes, we went up 1 million on the bond, but we've
Right.
lowered
Oh,
the
I
operating.
understand. I just-
And honestly, bottom line, I don't think the average person, that will make a difference, whether it's 84 or 85 or 86. It's how's it going to affect me? What's it going to do to my property taxes? They don't care what those numbers are, it's how it's going to affect them personally. And we have a way to do this without it affecting them personally at all. And we can say that. So I'd rather not try to, make us too short on the, on that permanent improvement in case something unforeseen goes wrong and we need, money out of there for something else.
I like the version 6, because I think what Chris and what Pam have said is, if we can go out there and say, look, we're building 3 new schools, we're rehabbing the middle schools, the high schools, we're putting air conditioning in Corrine Middle that needs it.
Corrine Elementary.
Or Corrine Elementary. And it's going to lower your taxes. I think that's a win-win for the community in the district. That's my feelings on it.
Well, it wouldn't lower, it would keep it the same.
Keep it the same, yeah. Yeah, it's not going to
Won't
go
raise
up.
it, right.
I was concerned we wouldn't be able to do the 3, and Michael and I had chatted about ways to bring up where the levy really got massacred was the Lake Hills, Springdale, down the
I
further
look at Lake
west.
Hills, it did well in my precinct in Lake Hills.
Honestly, I don't even think you can count it when you only have 6,000 people that take the
Yeah.
time to vote. I don't think it's an accurate number.
But-
We have to get out here and sell this to our parents
Yeah,
and
the
make sure
parents.
our parents go vote.
But I didn't think we'd be able to do the 3 schools and everything and get down to 3.87. And since we've already sort of got that plan out there, the recommendation that 3.87, the 3.18, 0.69 to me is the one that makes most sense. And I think it's going to be a much easier sale to sell this to the voters. I just know how I respond when I see will not raise taxes. It's huge, and we couldn't do that last time. Building community, to me, we needed some slogan, but it just sounds like, well, that's a tax increase. Anytime you say building something, it's not going to be free. Somebody's going to pay for it. And we did the best we could, but we didn't have anything else we could say. So.
Yeah, one thing to consider with the way the master facility plan came together, you have, if you can imagine graphically, you got Taylor and Welch, K3, that both feed into PRE as a 4-5. And we're replacing Taylor and PRE, so those 3 schools become 2 new schools. So you can't just do one of those 2. If you do PRE or Taylor, you got to do both of them because of the way the configuration changes. So if you're going to do 2 schools, there's no way to do one of those, so you hit the northwest attendance area and you do Struble, so you hit there's just no way to do that without doing all 3 of them.
Mr. President, are you open to any public input or anything?
I don't know if that's on the agenda or not.
It's not on the agenda because it's a work session, but it's up to the board if they want to allow that.
As our discussion concludes, I'm fine with that. We do have an executive session tonight that I expect to last a couple hours. So let's let the rest of the board, if they've got something to say about these. I don't know, what do you think? We can take 5 minutes worth of comments?
I said what I would needed to say.
I think we need
I
to...
agree with Chris.
Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. And we're saying the same message, except we're adding air conditioning, and it's not going to raise anybody's taxes.
And I'm fine with the plan that was developed for May 6th. I think that's just where we're a little bit apart at. Did you have any other comments, Michael?
I think it's really down to how we pay for it and which funds we use and when we use them. That $25 million balance that we have in the projection for version 5 looks pretty good. That all of our scenarios actually show us kind of decreasing a property tax collection. I know some of that has to do with the levy that we're passing, but even after the 2017 renewal, we're still, we always budget that a little conservatively. Our state funding, the modest increases budgeted for there, and we're talking about 1% and 2% in some cases. I think that's a good number as well. I'd like to know, I wish we had more than a 5-year forecast just to see the difference in the bond payments, just because that might affect our ability to go back to the voters later on, because we might need something, 10 years from now. And so that the millage that we put into a bond is going to make the whole thing cost more. I know there's good sound accounting behind that because you're paying for it over the useful life of the asset, but the less, if we can bond at the lower amount and still have a 60-day operating balance, that might be a good way to go.
Just to help you too,
Yeah.
on the levy renewals, that tax revenue is on the bottom, is where it factors in on your forecast.
Yeah.
It comes off the top and the renewal amount comes in at the bottom, so that's why
okay.
the tax
Okay.
difference is on the form.
I think the other thing though, Michael, the fact that, if we were sitting here debating as far as it's going to raise your taxes $50 versus not raising it at all, then maybe we'd have something more to discuss. But we have the opportunity to have an additional $10 million cash balance. I think to be fiscally responsible, that's huge, that we can do that without raising anybody's taxes. We can get all this accomplished, plus air-conditioned Colerain L, and have $10 million additional, for that cash balance. Because, who knows? We don't know what's going to happen in 17. I think we need that push there. We want, in a perfect world, hopefully 2017, this board will support it and we'll, that'll get renewed, but you just never know. And I would just rather see us go with that extra $10 million cash balance. And once again, I think, the recommendation of the entire team is important. And I think that's important for this board to support that. It's not something way off into left field.
None of these are off into left field. In fact, I think both we're dealing with two proposals straight out of right field here, very conservative.
Right. So I think this board needs to come together and support the administration. I think this is the right way to go. I'm actually excited about being able to go out there and promote this without it raising taxes and getting us a larger cash balance. And we'd still be doing the same message, which I think is important too.
Another reminder, back in fall when you guys were looking at what to put on the ballot, our debt margin, which is the legal limit of the amount of debt that the district can issue, is $112 million. So, and you kind of mentioned if you have to do something later. I know the Finance Committee didn't want to do the whole amount,
Right.
so I just wanted to remind you what that maximum number was.
So we would be
Below.
26.
At
28. This is 86 and the limit's,
112.
so it'd be 26 million below the,
Maximum.
That's a pretty healthy cushion, really.
That's nice.
Yeah, you could build another, 900 student building if you needed to for something like that. So it still gives you quite a bit of leverage in the future if you need to do that.
I think we have the opportunity to do, I think we're sitting better
Yeah, I think so,
than
too.
we were in May.
We're talking about really, now we're just talking about, how we pay for it, when we pay for it. I'm not going to, sit here and draw a line in the sand and say, oh my God, we got to do version 5 or.
Right. I just like that larger cash balance.
And for those of you in the audience, we're not voting on this tonight, we're just discussing it. I'd be fine with 5 minutes worth of public comment if you guys are.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay, Rich? Yeah. Having just keeping in mind that we've got a 2-hour agenda item ahead of us.
I can get behind the proposal that says no tax increase. The issue in my mind is how much of that millage goes to a bond versus how much goes to operating. Okay? So if I look at versions 5 and 6, they're the ones that I'm kind of thinking about. And just quickly, I'm not an investment guy, but one thing I have learned over time is that if you can reduce or minimize your debt, you're better off. So if we kind of just look at this, Amy and I had some email exchanges where I said, Amy, how much is it going to cost us a year to retire on this $85 million bond? And she said, it's $4.5 million a year, it's 35 years, that's $160 million, okay? If you set that 160 million aside and say, okay, let's bond just the elementary schools, that's 63 million. 68 million. But it's about one quarter. The renovation is about 1/4. So if we just did the elementary schools, we'd be talking about 65, 68 million. Okay. So if you bond 68 million versus you're bonding 186 million, okay, the differences over 35 years are approaching $40 million that you don't have to spend. But you say we want to do the work anyhow. We want to renovate those schools. So if we renovate those schools out of the cash reserves we have, okay, what we do is, in essence, we don't send $20 million of interest payments to bankers and people around the world. We fund it from our reserves. Now, to Pam's point, it does draw down our cash reserves a bit if we do that. Amy and I might disagree on this, but the general practice is that if you have 30 to 60 days, you're in ballpark of operating expense. She says 45 to 60, I'm 30 to 60. But in a general sense, the more money you have, the percentage can drop because things don't happen. If you have $1 billion budget, you don't need 20%, you need 10%. So there is some, I think, rationale to say that if we get down to a $25 million reserve, like is in version 5, we'll probably be okay. We could wrestle around that. I just hope you would think about that. The other thing I would say is if you look at version 6 versus version 5, because of the limit, no tax increase, we're going to get less operating income. Well, in a rough sense, in version 6, we're getting about $1 million more a year. Okay. In version 5, you're getting $2 million a year more. So over 35 years, version 5 brings $35 million more dollars into the district than version 6 does. Okay. And it costs me $20 million less to do it. Okay, to do the same work. So I'm saying, why don't I take some of the cash we've got, that we've accumulated, and use it to fund these renovations with the school, and do it in a way that kind of breaks it away from the building of the 3 elementary schools, because building new buildings versus renovating buildings is different work. Different work. And I've been championing for a while, let's build all 3 of these elementary schools exactly alike, and we'll save lots of money. We'll save millions if we can do that. That's one chunk of work. Now let's go in and do the renovations in the middle schools and the high schools when we can do it. So when I step back and just look at the big picture and say, I can get the same amount of work done, okay, but spend $20 million less to the bond market. 15, 20, you pick the right number. I mean, it's not 5. It's a lot we'll save if we don't go and ask for a bond for $83 million. We go and we ask for 86. We ask for 68. And, using Amy's number, I think, over 35 years, and that's what we have to think. We have to think long-term here, because the amortization is 35 years, and when we vote this thing in, it's going to be there, it's permanent. It's going to be there for 35 years. So we'll get $35 million more into our till, cash, into our till over 35 years with version 5 and version 6. You can fund what you want with it. Okay? Now we're going to spend we're going to send $20 million less to those bankers. And it just seems to me that from the best use of taxpayers' money, let's not get any more debt than we have to have. Let's use less debt. So my encouragement is, as you poke around version 5 and version 6 a little bit more, maybe get some consultant who knows more about this than Rich McVeigh, who's just a pragmatic guy who's running some numbers, and say, hey, this is big money. This is $55 million we're talking about here that could go into making our schools even better. So it's a longer-term issue, I think. See, so that's what I want you to do, is to think about that. Let's go out there and make the case it's not a tax increase, and I'll help you do that. Let's do it in a way that gets the best value from the taxes that we're getting. Okay? And I think, Amy and I, we could wrestle around this. We might. And I'll say it again, we may not need $25 million. And if property values grow, we may get more. So I just think about that. You're going to do the same amount of work. You're going to get your air conditioning. Okay. You're going to pull down your cash reserve a little more, but it's not too scary. I mean, there have been times when we've had a lot less than $25 million, and we didn't shut nothing down. How many times have we shut the school system down? because we didn't have enough money in cash reserve. Never done it. So my dad would say to me, Rich, don't go any farther in debt than you have to. And that's my plea to the board tonight. It's big money difference, big money difference. $35 million in cash in your pocket over 35 years, and $20 million less going to bankers. It doesn't help the students to send money to bankers.
Rich, what's your thought on, in 2017, that renewal
It'll
coming up?
pass. I think we can pass that. There are three things wrong with Colerain Township right now. Rumpke, our school system, and crime. That's what's holding property values down in this township. If you look at property values in this township, in actual dollars over the last 15 years, if you bring index into 2014, we're down 20%. Our property values are going down, okay? And it's going down for those three reasons. We need to invest in our schools.
Absolutely.
I'm there. So I want to help you do that. I just think that there's a smarter way, maybe. I don't want to say version 6, and I don't want to fly in the face of the recommendation of the team either. Maybe they didn't look at it that way, like I did, It says, that's a lot of money.
I'm still concerned, though, with this 2017. I know how you look at it and how I look at it. Absolutely, we need to support our school system, but clearly not everybody looks at it that way. So it makes me a little nervous that we pass this and the average person out there, all of a sudden 2017 rolls around. Well, they just got these new buildings and this and that. They don't need any more money, even though it won't raise taxes. And then I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I want to be prepared. What if for some reason that would go down? That extra 10 million in cash reserves would help us.
I just think 35 million is a lot of money, real money. Okay, that you can use to invest any way you think you need to help improve our academic standards. You've heard me talk about that all the time.
Right.
So I'm saying take the cash, invest it in the teachers, in the programs. Don't send it to a banker. Don't send $20 million to some banker when you got the cash.
Ruth, when you talk about 35 years, it's sort of like when you look at, when you buy a home, 30 years. I mean, it seems like an exorbitant amount, but over 35 years.
It is. I mean, that's what we all do to buy our homes.
I agree with you, but it's stupid to give it to bankers, but they're talking 35 years. I dare say a good portion of this room won't even be around here 35 years.
Not up here.
Who knows? But bottom line is, money is cheap right now. It's only going to go up. And I'd say when you can borrow at the rates we can get now.
What are you borrowing at, 4 or 5% maybe?
And they're talking about a fall increase.
And you, what do we make on this stuff? Nothing. You don't make anything on the cash we have. We make a little bit. I'm not trying to say we don't make stuff, but it's peanuts. So you have this $35 million there. You say it was really great, but we're not making anything on it. We make a little bit, but it's puny because that's the way the system is. So I don't want to repeat myself. I think it's a lot of money. I think it's a lot of money. Over 35 years, that's $1 million a year. $1 million a year is a lot. And the thought that I can do the same work and send $20 million less to bankers to do it, what's wrong with that idea? That's my point. There's nothing wrong with that idea.
Rich, thanks for your input. I know you've put a lot of time into studying this, and we'll consider what you've had to say, and any of the board members should feel free to call you. I really appreciate your
I think he makes
your
some
time.
really legitimate points in what he was explaining. I think one thing to consider with the 5-year forecast also is year 5 never gets here. We have our 5-year forecast, but basically the first year is this year coming up, and then the next 2 years is the budget biennium. We don't know what 4 or 5 is going to bring, and when you look at the difference in your number 5 and 6, when you look at the third year, fiscal year 17, you're looking at either 38 million or 43 million. So even Rich was talking about year 5 at 25 million, which is sufficient. What's the forecast going to look like in 5 years when that year actually comes? That's a difficult thing. And Randy used to say the same thing. Year 4 or 5, is the first 3 years that are the most critical. I think Rich brings up some good points because in 5 you're still doing the same amount of work. You're doing it for less money. And then, like Pam, you're concerned about 2017. the operating in 2017 isn't as critical because we have more operating coming in on a permanent basis. Like Rich said, we have 2 million coming in a year instead of 1 million with the permanent operating as part of this. Potentially, depending on what happens in 2017, the board could look at reducing the renewal for the operating in 2017 because of the 2015 operating that got added to it. So I think there's some very good points he makes that the board should consider.
Is there a spot in between? I mean, is there like a sweet spot in between 5 and 6, 5.5? I mean, Rich, I don't know, you're the number cruncher, I've got your numbers. Is there anything that would be a compromise between the two?
Well, I just backed up, and Amy's the expert of this. She went to the auditor and figured out how much we can get, and I'm just saying, well, practically, you know, I want to say to people, your taxes are not going to increase, we're going to get these new elementary schools, we're going to fix things, okay, make that type of thing. But to try to do it in what I think is the most prudent way with our money. And I just ran some numbers that are pretty easy to do, all right? And you just have to grasp the concept. You have to say, I like funding what I want from my own cash reserve rather than borrowing it and giving it to some bank and
Well, Rich, when I...
There are no bankers in this room.
They're going to school on your money, you know? That's not right if you can get away.
I understand what you're saying. When I bought my first house at age 24, I stayed in it until I had it paid off, and I took the proceeds from the sale of that and was able to put down almost 60% on my second house, and thereby mortgaging a lot less money, and that's paid off for me personally. So I think what you're saying is something very similar to that, is try to pay cash when you can, and as long as that doesn't affect our operating funds, and as Dr. Jackson just said, we'd have, and as you said also, we'd have 2 million a year instead of 1 million a year, however that shakes out. So I understand what you're saying.
Amy, how much do we get from the levy that's coming up in 2017? How much does that bring in?
A little over $7 million a year.
A little over $7 million a year.
Amy, what's your thought on 5 versus 6? Pros, cons?
I'm for either way. I do like 5 in the fact that, one, we can spend down the carryover. If your carryover is too big, you're not going to get your public support, and you don't want to grow that out of control. My concern would be years 5 through 10. The projection from the architects, we included what we needed to do for renovations for the first 5 years, but there's still that 5 to 10 renovations that are needed, and if we spend all of our carryover down, by the time we get through this forecast, we're into 5 to 10, and now how are we going to fund those type of items? So that's a concern I have.
Here's something I just kind of thought of too. I know we talked projections for enrollment projections. Have we looked at projections based on, I would think, when we do these new buildings, our enrollment could eventually, that could affect it to go up. Hopefully that'll get people moving back into the district. So have we factored that in for enrollment projections? Because what if all of a sudden we build these nice buildings and we get all these people moving in, and then we're busting at the seams? You know, are we going to have money to do what we need to do because, you know, we've got a lot more kids in the buildings now? I mean, I don't know, I just happened to think about that.
That's not figured into the projections. The projections just looking at, you know, census data and projecting it out and it being flatlined for the next 10 years. But I don't know if there's any way to project that. I guess we'd have to go out and look at similar districts that built buildings and what happened to enrollment. But that's not figured into the forecast.
Well, and a lot of those enrollment projections, the first 5 years are easy because you can base it on birth certificates. Yes, you're going to have some churning in the housing market, but I know historically for the last 20 years, our enrollment projections have been pretty accurate. If you look back at documents from 20 years ago, it kind of had us picked where we're at right now, looking way out there. So
Pam's point, the master plan, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but you're building more elementary schools than you need for capacity standpoint. It's like the total number is like 8,500 or 8,600 students, and we're talking about 790. So there is some excess capacity built into the new buildings. I don't know exactly how much number it is.
No, the capacity, Rich, is to go to all-day kindergarten, so there's, so the numbers are actually going to increase because those K students are going to go from a 0.5 to a full if the board decides to do that, and it's a cost neutral because we get twice as much funding from the state for those students, but really it's right where we need to be on the numbers, the square footage.
Amy and Rich and Amy, I guess, are the two number real experts in this room here tonight. Is there a way, Amy, we could kind of meet halfway in between what Rich is saying and option number 6, so that we can sort of satisfy having some more reserves and not dipping in too deeply? I mean, is it possible to come up with an option 7 that would be a compromise?
Yeah, because the difference between 5 and 6 is that all the renovations are either out of your general fund or through a bond. So to do a compromise in the middle, you just pick which renovations you want bonded and which renovations you want to pay out of general fund.
But I mean, what would that do to you had recommended 3.18, 0.69 with the option 6. Could we maybe get that down to 3 or something? I'm not sure.
We're really just talking about a mix at this
It's
point. We're
just
pretty much
dollars.
committed to.
You just tell me how much you want to have bonded, and I just work backwards, and because the total will be 3.87.
Yeah.
We'll just bond however many mills then you want to.
So instead of having the $25 million carryover in option 5 versus the $35 million carryover, maybe we figure something out where we have $30 million.
Could you live with that, Rich? Because I want Rich working for this.
Well, you guys just need to kick it around some more, because, I'm very comfortable with version 5, as you can see.
Yeah.
Okay?
I mean, we're not that far apart, Rich.
So you guys got to get comfortable with a number that you like, and be able to sell it, okay? I'm selling version 5. I think it works. I think it works better than version 6, and I think it would work better than version 7, but I haven't seen version 7, so that's what you guys have got to figure out. Version 7.
But we're not that far apart.
No, and I'm with you too. I don't believe there's going to be a time where to borrow money is going to be any cheaper.
Be better than now.
And I just want to make sure, I don't want to see us down the road all of a sudden, something's come up, or who knows, state funding's been sliced and whatever, and then all of a sudden some of those things on there that we were going to pay from, the
A
general
bond.
fund,
We have to take.
we take it off the table.
And when money is so cheap, that's why, I mean, even though the economy, the argument is it's maybe not doing as well as it can, but yet cars, I've been working for Toyota the last almost year, and their car sales are at records because money is so cheap.
I agree with you, Chris, on that.
Buying these things.
But they're still laying people off.
But they probably are. Robots are doing more and more work from the videos I see over there. But the point is, people are willing to extend themselves a little bit because it is so doggone reasonable. So I would suggest that if everybody else is okay with it, that we compromise between 5 and 6. As long as Mr. McVeigh stays, because Rich, you're one of those few that'll sit down and work hours on numbers and write letters to editors and do all that stuff, and I want to make sure we're on the same team
I
here.
just want to make sure you guys are spending the money the best way to have it. Okay? So I know you got to take this around. She created version 5 by when she put in there enough to do the middle schools. She could have said, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do all of it. So she was just trying to help you. Okay? So you need to think about your taxpayers, okay, and say, I can look the guy in the barbershop on the face and say, we made the right deal here. Okay? By bonding this much and coming out of cash, I can't do that. I'm not the elected official. You got to be able to say, truthfully, all right? You made the best deal here.
And I'll still go back to, there's a handful of people like yourself, and then the rest of the people, what is it doing into my tax bill? They don't care about any of these numbers. I'm not saying it's not important, it absolutely is. But to be able to do what we need to do to affect every single student in this district, do it right, do it responsible, but it not raise their taxes. I mean,
Pam, that's like,
I just,
time I went to buy a car, which, car guy, somebody give that. The salesman told me all they ask about is, I want to keep my monthly payment at X
Right,
number of dollars.
right.
They don't care how you get to that, how many months, what the interest rate is, that's what I'm willing to pay. And I agree with you that the voter just looks at the grand total. But Rich has a valid point. I mean, but when the money's so cheap, we're really not enriching a whole lot of bankers. Rich, I mean, geez, what is it, 3%?
Only 20 million. Listen, I would say the superintendent is saying, you guys you've got options. You could hire somebody, to help you figure it out.
Well, but we're on such a tight timeline
Yeah,
to get
that's-
it. That's
well,
the
timeline's the
problem.
issue.
I would
Is the
say-
timeline to get it on the ballot.
If Amy could figure out what that option 7 is, which is the halfway point between the two, and present that to us as well. The thing Chris
It's just making the year 5, 30 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And backing into,
25, 35, make it
backing
30.
into mills. Is that
Just see
what
what
you
that
want to
looks like
bring
and keep it-
in a resolution on June 8th?
Yeah, see, we have to have a resolution on June 8th. I mean, if we want this on the ballot,
I'm fine with that.
I'm,
An easy way to get at this board is to say, do I want an extra million coming in, or do I want $750,000 or $500,000? Tell her the number and she'll give you the capital. So from an operating standpoint, I think this is what you deal with. Once the bond is set, it's like, bye-bye, we don't worry about that, it's done. So I think you ought to be playing with, do I want $500,000 a year coming in new taxes, or do I want $1 million a year coming in new taxes, or 3/4? I think maybe that's really where you're talking. I wish they-
Right, I can back into the number. We have a total of 3.87.
Well, I'd say, speaking as one of us, bring back the resolution we just discussed with the 30.
30 million in year 5.
So she's going to come back with 3 resolutions?
no.
But I don't, just to
I
hit
think-
that, what Chris is talking about.
I mean, that way we're sort
Without
of
voting,
hearing
are we
you,
all
Rich,
comfortable with
speaking
that?
as the conservative taxpayer, but then we have a little more cushion.
Mainly when
And I think it's a fair
savings.
compromise.
Yeah.
Andrew wants,
In my opinion, I mean, it is a good problem to have. In my opinion, I didn't speak to Rich before. I know he's been talking with Amy, and I haven't had a chance to discuss this with him. If I was the board, I would go with 5. I would be less concerned about that 25 million and more concerned about the operating money that's coming in. And that, like what Rich explained, I think is a lot of logic. I think it's something you should really consider. You're getting the same improvements to all the buildings. You can
And there's
advertise
no
as
chance
such.
something's going to come up that all of a sudden, oops, the middle school, we have to cut this.
Well, I mean, let's look at what happens.
Well, no, but I mean, I need to know that, because if I'm going out there and I'm selling this to everybody, that every single student in this district's going to benefit from the passage of this levy, I mean, we all know that we get thrown curveballs all the time from the state, where all of a sudden, oops, we've lost $1 million here, whoops, we've lost $2 million there. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yes, and any general fund, the board has the discretion to do as they wish with it in terms of making choices. The board could in 2 years determine, okay, we're not going to make these renovations because we need it for X, Y, and Z programming because the state cut is. When it's a bond, it is dedicated for that purpose and that purpose only.
Exactly. And I
So
guess,
there is that issue that the board would need to consider. That's a good point, Pam.
that's what I struggle with, because in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, it could be a totally different board. And if we're the board that's going out there and selling it to the community and saying, A, B, C, and D is going to be done with this money if you support this levy, and 2 years down the road, it's a different board or something weird's come up, and then all of a sudden, tough choices have to be made, and probably the right choices at the time, but those things change, I think you lose credibility. I think that puts it back on, we just didn't tell them the truth. Because we have to realize that could happen. I mean, we've seen where all of a sudden weird things, was it Peterson? Or
Scholarship.
Scholarship, look, we didn't know that was coming, then all of a sudden we were out how much money? And all that came out of the general fund. That kind of stuff is real. So that's where that's where I just want to make sure what we tell the public that we're going to do with these buildings, we have the money to do it.
But if that happens, we'll have the more of the operating dollars come in, and we'd have that option. If we go with version 6 and have a lower operating amount and a higher bonded amount, then we don't have that extra cash to have that discussion with. So I'd
Yeah, but
be,
you have that money to do those renovations on those 5 other schools.
And I'm okay not doing 6. I kind of like what Chris said. You know, I think it's kind of,
It's a fair compromise. I mean, we're meeting right in the middle. Instead of 35, instead of 25, it's 30.
we're not giving as much to the banks, as you
bankers.
say,
Yeah.
but we are kind of preparing ourselves just in case. And unfortunately, in public education, those just in case things pop up all the time.
So ultimately, you want Amy to shift more to the bond, take it 5, or let's look at 5,
More
shift
to
a
the
little bit more to the
operating.
bond, less to the operating than what 5 is, or for your case, if you're talking about 6, less to the bond and a little more to the operating,
like-
so that the general fund ends up at a $30 million cash balance.
So we're probably looking at
Make-
somewhere in the neighborhood of a $75 million bond then, in that case.
I think you're right.
Well,
somewhere in
more or
there.
less, I'm just looking at the $7 million
that's
a year
pretty
over
close.
2 years and just
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. So that'll reduce it by, 10 million from what we tried in May, so.
Boy, the numbers get in my mind. You're like,
well, no, it's pretty easy to understand.
well, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at all these big numbers.
We'll
and-
take all the
and not
zeros
knowing
off the
what
end and
future's
be
gonna
easier for you to
bring.
think about.
I just know that the bottom line is, if we can put on those signs, will not raise your taxes, with a much bigger turnout with trustees and the other issues. Yeah, we're going to have 30, 40, maybe 50% turnout. It's going to be much more representative of the district. I feel good about it. But then again, I felt good about 1 month ago, so.
Well, and with the reduced bond, when people see that it's down 10 or 15 million dollars, that would certainly show them that we heard what a few of them said.
Yeah.
The few that showed up May 6th said.
And we'll go with the whole 3.87 mils combination.
It needs to stay that or below.
That's
That
what
or
I'm
below.
asking.
Yeah.
What am I? Okay.
Yeah, you're still capped at 3.87.
Right, but in the resolution I'm bringing back to be voted on, I have to have the mills in there. So am I
Right.
taking it all the way to 3.87, or do you want it?
Yeah, I think that's
think
what
Yeah.
everybody's agreeing on.
I think everybody's seems to be
As long
okay
as
with that.
as long as it doesn't raise anybody's
It'll
taxes.
keep everybody neutral where they're currently at. Property owners
That's
will not
key.
pay more than what they're currently paying, including with all the tax credits.
That are known at this time.
Yes.
Because the state,
But do those have to be in by a certain time? Just
June
like on-
30th, but I think it's when the state.
I don't think they're- I'm following the budget.
That.
I'm following the budget deliberations, and I'm not seeing anything that's really going to affect our property taxes like that. And I think we have a pretty good idea that we're going to get a slight increase, because the Senate's going to unveil their budget after they took all their testimony. They're going to unveil that next week. And there's no reason, it's the same people talking, and they're saying the same things, and it's the senators saying the same things that are represented for the most part. So it's going to be, pretty close, probably pretty close to what the House had, more so what the governor had, so.
But nothing
It's not going to be
exciting.
huge, yeah, it's not going to be huge either way.
And the forecast is the House version. Is what's in this bill.
So,
I can just say for myself, I was more than pretty upset that evening and the next couple days to follow, but after this conversation tonight and to see what we can still accomplish and not raise taxes, I kind of feel that excitement coming back again and ready to jump into this and work together with the community and get this rolling.
The other key is if the levy doesn't pass in November, then the emergency levy goes away also, because it's coming off at the end of the year, and we still need to do the renovations. So we would have the whole 85 million to do internally without a bond or an operating. So that's, just so you're aware that depending on what happens in November, it's going to affect the general fund.
right, and hopefully it passes, and if it doesn't, then we're back to the drawing board November 9th or whatever. But I think keeping it at 387 or below is going to give us a lot better chance, and if the people can look at the bonded amount and go, wow, they're, looking at that seriously, and I think it'll really help get it passed. And, you know, as Chris said, there's a lot of other stuff that's going to be on the ballots. You're going to have a lot different turnout in November than you had earlier this month.
Okay,
So,
we were ready to.
so come back to us with,
I'll bring the resolutions on June 8th. We have to
and if
start-
you can send it out sooner, that would be good, I guess.
Sure.
In principle, we agree.
Is everybody all right?
Yes.
Well, we'll conclude that discussion and move on to the next item then, which is executive session. The board will consider a motion to move into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
So moved.
Did you want to make a recommendation? Go ahead.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the motion to move into executive session as listed.
So moved.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? We're on time. We will not be taking any action when we come out of executive session. You're welcome to stick around if you like, but I anticipate it will take at least 2 hours, so. And with that, is there any other discussion? Please call for a vote. Amy? The motion to go into executive session carries 5-0. Thank you.
Leave our meeting open.